Morning, Radical Praise Kids. Welcome back to another week of Free Will's Radical Praise Kids virtual video service. We're so happy that you decided to join us again this Sunday. My name is Miss Cheryl.
And my name is Gabby. Last week we learned about faith, and in order to have faith, we have to believe in God's promises. We talked about Abraham and how he's considered a faith hero because he knew that he had to believe in God's promises and trust that the outcome would be great.
I really enjoyed last week's lesson, and I'm so excited to learn more about faith.
I still remember the 4 values. Do you?
Yes.
Let's say them together. Number 1,
Love God.
Number 2,
Love one another.
Number 3, respect one another. And number 4, believe you have a purpose.
Hey guys, did you remember all 4 values from last week? Way to go, RP kids. We knew you could do it. We have to buckle our seatbelts and prepare for the next stop on our journey. The first stop was love, and the second stop is faith.
Yes, guys, buckle up those seatbelts. Miss Cheryl, do you smell something cooking? Whatever it is, it smells really, really good. Hey, are you hiding something behind your back?
Yeah. Smell that.
They smell so good. Are you going to share?
Of course I'm going to share, but let's dive into the lesson first.
Okay, I guess I'll have to wait.
Remember how last week we discussed how faith is trusting in something or someone?
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who doesn't love chocolate chip cookies. There's an interesting story behind these cookies. We get to enjoy these cookies all because of a simple mistake.
A mistake? How?
Ruth owned an inn and liked to make homemade food for her guests. She was making butter cookies and thought she would make them all chocolate instead. She cut a bar of Nestle chocolate into tiny pieces and added them to the cookie dough. She thought that the chocolate would melt completely and she would have chocolate cookies. When the cookies came out of the oven, the chocolate hadn't melted, and all instead the chocolate chips had kept their form. The guests loved the cookies, and people began to come to the inn just to eat the famous cookies. Nestle liked the idea, and they got permission from Ruth to put her recipe on the back of their chocolate bars. In return, she got all the chocolate she wanted to keep on baking those cookies, known as the Toll House cookies.
Wow. So something that's sweet and good exists because of a mistake as well?
Yes, there are some other inventions, and they were discovered by mistake. Do you know what this is?
That's a Slinky. No way. This wasn't a mistake.
Yes, it is. And what about this?
These are Post-it notes. My teachers have these everywhere.
Yes, all of these inventions exist because someone made a mistake. We can learn a lot from our mistakes.
I make mistakes a lot sometimes and do the wrong thing too. Do y'all ever make mistakes?
Yes, I make a lot of mistakes, but don't worry because everybody makes mistakes. But there is some good news. My faith in God assures me that He will forgive me no matter how many times I make mistakes. I try very hard to obey His commandments, but I do make mistakes, and God knows that I'm not perfect all of the time. But He loves me anyway. You do know that God loves you regardless of how many mistakes you make.
I sure hope so, because I mess up a lot. Some of the things God asked me to do, like always tell the truth and be obedient to my parents, some of these things can be very hard to do all the time, and sometimes I make mistakes.
You're young and still learning a lot. Just know that when you make mistakes, remember that you are never alone. Have faith and know that God will forgive you every single time. All you have to do is pray and ask God for forgiveness. Having great faith in God means that you have to be willing to pray and talk to God a lot.
Thanks, Miss Cheryl. That makes me feel a lot better. Don't worry, I won't forget to use my faith and talk and pray to God.
Gabby, faith in God is believing that He can and will do all that He has promised. A person who has faith in God chooses to love and obey Him above all else. But there are times that we make mistakes, and it is okay as long as we remember to talk to God about it and ask for forgiveness. This brings us to our 4 values. Can you say them with me, guys? Number 1, love God. Number 2, Love one another. Number 3, respect one another. And number 4, believe you have a purpose. Guess what time it is? It's time for my favorite part of the service, praise and worship.
You all already know that praise and worship is an opportunity for us to thank God for all He has done and to honor God for who He is.
RP kids, don't you agree that praise and worship was amazing? Now it's time to practice our memory verse for the month. Remember that our theme for this month is faith. So our memory verse is all about faith. In the 11th chapter of the book of Hebrews, the first verse tells us, faith means being sure of the things we hope for, and faith means knowing that something is real even if we don't see it. As it reads, Hebrews 11:1. Now, let's repeat it, but this time you and Gabby repeat after me. Faith means being sure of the things
we
hope for. And faith means knowing that something is real even if we don't see it. Great job, everyone. I am so excited because now it's time for the main lesson. Hi, Mr. Gill.
Thanks, Gabby and Cheryl. Those two rock. Hello, Radical Praise kids. Now it's time to get into our main lesson for today. As we talk about the lesson, we need you to remember the main point of today's lesson. Have faith and talk to God. The prophet Daniel was living under the king who didn't respect God. When he made prayer against the law, it didn't stop Daniel from talking to God. The punishment was terrible. He was thrown into the cave of the lions overnight. The Lord saved Daniel and protected him from harm all night long. The next day, everyone was amazed by the power of God, just like Daniel. We can trust that Jesus will save those who follow him. No matter how bad the trouble, no matter how many mistakes we make, all we have to do is talk to God, because God has the power to save. Let us take a look at the video to help us understand faith.
So this is where we are in the story. God made a perfect world, but people messed it up. They didn't always love God or each other. But God had a plan to rescue them. And a guy named Daniel got to be a part of it. Daniel was also a slave. Remember, God's special people weren't always liked by everybody. Daniel really loved God. He talked to God. And God talked to him, too. God still talks to people. And Daniel listened. We can do that too. God helped Daniel understand things other people couldn't. And Daniel helped the king with the king's problems. And that made the king like Daniel a lot. He made Daniel his #1 helper and put him in charge of lots of other people. That made some people jealous. So they tried to get him in trouble. They were always watching, trying to catch him doing something wrong. But they couldn't. They saw him pray every day, 3 times a day. And they realized, dun, dun, dun. If praying was against the rules, they'd be sure to get Daniel in trouble. So the no good guys tricked the king, and he made a rule.
Hear ye, hear ye.
His name was King Darius.
You can't pray to anyone but me.
So if anyone was caught praying to someone other than the king, they'd be thrown into a pit with lions. Hungry ones! Roar! Now usually, it's a good idea to obey the rules. But when Daniel heard this rule, he knew he couldn't obey it. So he kept right on praying to God, doing what he'd always done, 3 times a day, even if it meant he would become lion food. Pretty soon they saw Daniel praying. And when they did, they told the king, which made him really sad. See, Daniel was one of his favorite helpers, and the king didn't want the lions to hurt him. But he had made a rule, and he couldn't change it. But before he sent Daniel to the lions, he prayed.
God, please rescue Daniel from the lions.
The next morning, no one expected Daniel to be alive. But when the king went to check on him,
Daniel, has God rescued you?
Daniel said, "Yes! Woohoo! Yay!"
Cowabunga!
An angel had closed the lion's mouth, and Daniel didn't have a scratch on him. Nada. The king made a new rule.
Everyone will pray to Daniel's God.
And soon, just like God rescued Daniel, he will rescue everyone else with a very special hero. But that's another part of the story.
Wow, last week we called Abraham a faith hero. Well, now we can call Daniel a faith hero too. A faith hero believes in God. Daniel knew that all he had to do was talk to God, and he would protect them. And it is so important to know that it doesn't matter what you have done, you can always talk to God if you make a mistake, tell a lie, disobey your parents, or do something wrong. Just know that God is always there to listen to you, to help you. Daniel had the courage to keep praying to God, and because he had faith and prayed, God protected him. Let's see if you guys were paying attention to the lesson. It's time for our trivia game. Okay, here's the first question. Who did God send to help Daniel in the lion's den? Did you say the angel? That's right. Question number 2. Is it true or false that the king was happy that Daniel was in the lion's den? Did you say false? You are correct. The king was so upset about Daniel's being in the lion den that he did not eat or sleep the entire night. I know you guys know this one. What does God want us to do when we make a mistake or get into trouble? Did you say no? Excellent. We must always have faith to continue to pray and to talk to God. So let's recap our lesson and remember our main point. Have faith and talk to God. No matter what happens to Daniel, he ends up praying and trusting God. He knows that God has a better plan for him than anyone else, so what does he do? He does continue to pray and trust God, and when God tells him to do something, Daniel obeys. In our lives, we are sometimes faced with times when it's hard to trust God or to obey him. Maybe we are having a really hard time in school, or there's a bully on the playground, or our parents are fighting all the time. Maybe we are hungry or made fun of or don't feel like we have any friends. Whatever is going on in our life, though, we must be like Daniel and trust God. Have faith and know that God will always take care of you.
Wow, that was another amazing lesson. During the week, we want you to discuss today's lesson with family. Tell them all about the faith of Daniel. Let them know that in times of trouble, always stop and talk to God. You can pray and say, Jesus, I don't know or understand why this is happening, but I'm going to use my faith in you and trust that everything is going to be all right.
Yes, that was amazing. Okay, RP kids, before we go, just one last thing we want you to remember. Have faith and talk to God. This week, we want you to send us a video telling us how you have demonstrated your faith in God this month. It could be a prayer of you asking God to forgive you of your mistakes, or even thanking Him for always listening and being there for you. Email your videos to the email at the bottom of the screen, and it may air in one of our future services.
We can't wait to see all of your videos. See you next time.
Bye.